4, 3, 2, 1. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Curtis Tucker Podcast. I am Curtis Tucker, aka Shags, your host, your podcaster, your all-around good guy. So thanks for joining in. You guys can hit me up at curtistucker.com or shags at shaggyduck.com. And I would love to hear from you. You guys, please subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcasting app. And if you guys are watching me wave at you from right here in Shaggy Duck Studio, go ahead and please subscribe to the YouTube channel. It really helps out in the long run. I'm actually trying to make a living at this. So the more subscribers I have, actually, the more money I will eventually make, and then I can do more episodes. Would love to hear some episode ideas from you guys. Got a question for you real quick. I was surfing on Twitter today, as I do at lunch. I think I've told you guys before, I normally only get on Twitter at lunch. It's just, I don't know why. It's just kind of what it is. But there's usually a controversy on there. And one guy on there had mentioned that he could only watch, or he could only listen to about 4 or 5 minutes of a podcast because he couldn't get through the people talking at the beginning. He wanted them like literally from the minute the podcast started to get to the subject matter, whatever it was. And so it was basically kind of like, I think he was treating or thinking of podcasts as like, remember the old days when we used to have like a cassette on how to do public speaking, and you'd push the cassette in and it would almost immediately start up 10 ways to do public speaking better, no banter, no introduction, all that. So my question to you guys is, and especially for you all that listen to me on the 70s Buzz podcast and Buzzhead Radio, a big, huge part of the 70s Buzz podcast has become the intro, the beginning, the banter, the reading of the emails and answering the questions in the phone calls and all that. But I'm guessing if you don't like that stuff, you're probably not listening to the podcast. But if you are listening to all the podcast and that annoys you, let me know. Does, any amount of opening, beginning banter annoy you, or just, if it goes on for longer than 10 minutes, or is that the best part of the show for some of you? Let me know. Would love to hear your feedback on that. So don't forget that I have started also another podcast. So I've actually got 4 weekly podcasts going right now. We've got the 70s Buzz podcast, Buzzhead Radio podcast, the Curtis Tucker podcast, and now I'm doing the Okie Buzz podcast. And that's basically just letting people know all of the entertainment and fun stuff, adventures going on around Oklahoma, just getting it off the ground. So it's going to take me a couple of months to kind of figure out how I'm going to do the episodes and the website and all that, but it's coming soon. So let's hop into this episode. Let's talk about, I've noticed, we've kind of talked about this, things that kids today, don't know that we had in the 70s, but there's things that just have kind of quietly and slowly disappeared over time, not necessarily from the 70s, but 70s, 80s, 90s. And so this is my list of 25 everyday things that have quietly disappeared. Now, some of them haven't completely disappeared. Like, there's going to be people out there that are going to be like, oh, I have that, or I know where that is. But on a large scale is what I'm talking about. Overall, these 25 things have disappeared, and most of them, pretty much all of them, it wasn't like just one day they were there and then, an asteroid hit and they were gone. It was kind of like they were there and then they were there a little bit less and then a little bit less. And then we got busy with stuff over here. And then 5 years, 10 years, 15 years later, we thought, oh, wow, that thing over there it's gone. Wow, when did that go away? It's just stuff that we didn't really think about. So here is my list. Let's jump into it. And these are in no particular order. I just jotted them down as I was thinking about them and remembering them. The first one on my list is video and DVD rental stores. And so we here in Enid, we used to have quite a few places to rent DVDs and movies. And our big one was a store called Hastings, and it not only had DVDs. Well, at first it had videos, VHS, and then DVDs, and then it also had books and records. And it was just one of those stores that I think it went out of business. But it's like I don't really remember. And I mean, I spent a lot of time there on the weekends trying to wait on the newest movies. And I just don't remember like when it all went away, when they're just, I think Red Boxes came along. I wasn't really a big Red Box rental person. And I don't really remember having streaming services early when they came out. So I'm kind of fuzzy on how I transitioned from going to DVD rental stores to not renting movies anymore. I don't know what years that was. So, but anyway, there literally is nowhere in my hometown to rent DVDs or movies. All the Red Boxes are gone now. So I don't know. I don't know where they went. And then phone books, I know with our digital phones, I don't really know anybody's phone numbers. I don't know. I do know my wife's. I don't know my two daughters' phone numbers. And then I don't know anybody else's phone number, because on our phones, it's not in there by phone number. It's by the person's name, and you just click on the person's name and it calls them. So, I understand why phone books were phased out. I just don't really remember. I remember they came every year and they kept getting thinner and thinner and thinner. And then it's like the yellow pages went away. And I think we actually, every now and then, I think we'll still get one from like an odd phone book company. But I mean, these things are like DVD thin. I don't know what the heck would even be in them. If they do show up, we usually toss them. Yeah, I mean, you pretty much Google any phone number that you want. No need for those anymore. This one, some of you may not. I don't know. Let's throw this one out there. So back in the day in Enid, Oklahoma, we still have, and we had three pretty large buildings, like, 10 floors and above. And so I think they all three had multiple elevators. And back in the day and it was almost always elevator ladies. So when you would get in the elevator, they would ask you what floor you wanted to go to, and they would close this kind of weird accordion gate thing, and then they would zip you up to your floor and let you out. And then I think they were around when I was in high school, and it must have been like I went off to college and then I came back, and I don't know when the ladies disappeared that used to take you up and down in the elevators. I don't know where they went. Record stores. Now I know vinyl was, phasing out, and I even got rid of my turntable and ended up selling all of my albums, but I just don't really, and then Hastings, which sold albums, went out. I guess that might've been the last one in Enid. And then there was no stores you could buy record albums in any longer. And I don't really know like when cities went from like 5 record stores to 2 to 1. It just kind of all slowly, one would close and then another one. And now there's record stores popping back up, and they're all kind of, it's not like there's a chain. I haven't really noticed a vinyl record chain, but they're all kind of local places, kind of weird, in weird locations, and selling tons of used albums and fewer new albums. But I don't know. I just don't really, it just kind of like record stores slowly just kind of faded away. And what about black and white TVs? Seems like every house I went to had at least one black and white TV, and included in that is the little TV. So it's like everybody's kitchen had a little TV, just a little box TV, and a lot of times they were black and white. And I think my mom had bought us a little black and white that I think she kept in our bathroom. And black and white TVs, are there even? I doubt there's even such a thing. I don't. Nobody. Why would you sell a black and white TV? I don't know that I've been to anybody's house in a couple of decades that has a black and white TV. So I don't know. I just know when I went off to college, our house had at least one or two black and white TVs, and then it doesn't. They're all gone. Black and white TVs just gone. Fish and birds and probably mice and other pets being sold in department stores. I don't know exactly when birds and fish disappeared from like the marts and the department stores. That used to be a big fun section for us as kids. We would go, our big one here in Enid was a store called Woolco, and we would go to Woolco, and that's kind of where we got our pets. Uh, Ticket stubs to concerts and events. And this has just slowly been more recently, is you rarely get paper ticket stubs for concerts anymore, because everybody's purchasing tickets and things on their apps on their phones. And then when you show up at the venue, they just scan your phone. Now, I know I've got a lot of ticket stubs from, about 10 years ago, 8, 10, 15 years ago, a lot of concerts I was going to here in Enid. I think our venue here in Enid still has paper ticket stubs, but they're not like, the old days where like might have had the pictures of the band or something. I mean, it's just a paper generic-y looking ticket, but those are fading away. The ticket stubs and to sporting events and concerts. Here in Enid, big thing growing up in the 70s and even in the 80s, because of our downtown, it was so popular and there was so few parking spaces that we had parking meters everywhere downtown, and they were around for quite a while, and it seems like they disappeared. And I could be wrong on this, but then it seems like they came back for a little while. So back in the day, you had these little discs that you put in them, and you would get these discs from the store. So if you went to the stores, they would give you these discs for shopping there. And then I think you could buy the little parking meter discs if you wanted to park. And then it seems like those went away. And then I think the parking meters came back where they were coin operated, and you had to put coins in them. And then just, I don't know, it doesn't seem like that super long ago, but it probably was, probably 20 years, maybe 15 years. Then they all kind of went away again. So now Enid doesn't have parking meters. We have a parking meter maid, a person that comes by and puts a chalk mark on your tire. And if they come back in an hour and your car is still in the same position with that chalk mark, then you get a parking ticket. So that's how they do it now. Local radio DJs on 24/7. So we've got We've got two major radio stations in town, and each of those radio stations has multiple radio stations. And just seems like back in the day, it was live DJs 24/7. You knew their names, you saw them around town. And then I kind of remember there for a while, they slowly all faded out. And then it was like, some stations had no local DJs, and then like one station had like morning and drive time DJs, and then nobody had live local DJs. They were like satellited in from other cities. And now it's kind of like vinyl. They're kind of making a comeback, and some of the local radio stations have live DJs because that's really the only way they can compete with the streaming services and the satellite, is to have somebody local talking about local stories. So that's making a comeback. So some of these things have disappeared and were gone, and now they're making a comeback, but that doesn't matter because they were gone for a while. One thing that's happening now that's really weird is software and things like that. Everything's subscription based now. So like, I don't know if you can still, I don't even know, maybe you can, but you can't like really buy like Photoshop and Illustrator. They want you to rent it monthly. And so like you don't have, the DVD. So I've got all of my old laptops, and let's see, I've got an iMac, which doesn't have a DVD player on it. So I've got Photoshop and Illustrator, the software I bought, gosh, it's probably been 15 years ago, and it's all installed on my laptops that it could be installed on. Some of them got too old for those versions of the software, but my last laptop still has a hard copy of Photoshop and Illustrator on them. And I don't even know if they sell it, but if they do, I wouldn't be able to install Photoshop or Illustrator on my iMac, which is already at least 5 years old, if not older. So the only way I could get Photoshop or Illustrator on my new computer is to do the subscription, except I found a workaround where I can connect my iMac to my old laptop, and it pops up a window and shows me the screen. It's screen sharing. And once I turn on screen sharing, I can turn on my laptop onto my iMac and have it fill the screen. So I'm actually working on the desktop from my laptop. So if I need to use Photoshop or Illustrator, I just open up screen sharing and I use it from my laptop. But again, I'm hearing more and more that you just can't buy software anymore. You've got to have a monthly subscription to most software anymore. Full-size spare tires. I don't know. It just kind of faded. We started buying new cars, and they had those little funky spare tires, and supposedly to save room and to be easier to change. And now, unless you have like a pickup truck, I think even SUVs come with the little spare tires. I've got a Jeep. Jeeps are not going to have the funky little spare tires. I think Jeeps are always going to have a full size spare tire. But yeah, so full size spare tires have disappeared. This one did kind of happen. I mean, it kind of started fading. Saturday morning cartoons. I think as time went on, there was fewer and fewer Saturday morning cartoons. And then eventually there was like only one station. It wasn't like the three main stations were still showing, I think only one station. Well, even those I think might have quit. It might even been a cable station that was showing Saturday morning cartoons. But then, one day they announced, that was going to be the end of syndicated Saturday morning cartoons, and blip, they were gone. But I don't remember really when like ABC, NBC, and CBS quit showing Saturday morning cartoons, and the problem was that kids, number one, just weren't sitting around on Saturday morning watching cartoons. They're watching on their phone, but then they also were able to watch cartoons 24/7 on the Cartoon Network and other channels. And so cartoons just weren't special anymore on Saturday morning. Now, here's one thing that I personally and my neighbor personally still have, but we don't use, but we still have. But those tall antennas that were on the big metal poles and then all the thingies sticking out. Both of ours are on poles. They're not, remember, back in the day, everybody had a small pole on their roof, and then you had your antenna on top of that. But we have poles in the ground and it's almost impossible to get our antennas down because those poles are so big and heavy. But you rarely see, new houses, nobody has the old antennas anymore. If you do still have an old antenna, you can hook those up and get local stations, like a lot of local stations for free by just hooking your TV up. And there are cables that allow you to hook today's modern TVs up to those antennas. So, but that's one thing that kind of faded away. Ashtrays, there's, you can't smoke in public places. So obviously there's no more ashtrays in like doctors' offices and airports, but even around the house, it seems like more people are smoking outdoors or not smoking. And, back in the day, every house probably had an ashtray in every room. And that was the thing you always made for your parents in pottery class. And, ashtrays were kind of a big deal. 1 liter pop bottles. It doesn't seem like they lasted that long. I remember, we always drank soda pop out of glass bottles, and then cans came along and bottles faded away and everybody was using cans. And then 1 liter bottles came along, and Dr. Pepper and Coke all had these, glass 1 liter bottles. Within 2 liter plastic bottles came out, and then 3 liter plastic bottles came out. I don't even know. I'm trying to think. I never go down the soda aisle anymore. Do they even sell 2 and 3 liter bottles anymore? Maybe those have faded away too. I know the metal or the glass 1 liter bottles faded away. If they're not selling, I don't know. Somebody tell me, do they still sell? I don't drink soda. I haven't drank soda in maybe 30 years. I don't know but I don't remember seeing anybody with 2 and 3 liter bottles anymore. I don't know. They could be around. I don't know. Maybe those faded away too. Somebody let me know. If they did, does soda pop only come in cans now? I don't know. Somebody let me know. Music on cassette tapes. I know we went to CDs, but you could, a lot of us still had cassette players in our cars, and it just seemed like one day they were gone. I mean, you just really couldn't buy cassettes anymore. Nobody, and even today, cassettes, vinyl has made a comeback. You can still buy CDs of a lot of songs, even though pretty much everybody's going to streaming. But cassettes, and now cassettes took the place of 8-tracks. So 8-tracks didn't fade away. 8-tracks are killed overnight. And then I think that's kind of what happened to cassettes. It just seems like I don't really remember when you couldn't buy cassettes anymore, but those have gone away. Now, some people may not remember this, but back in Enid, Oklahoma, back in the day, we had 2 newspapers every day. There was a morning newspaper and an evening newspaper, and everybody, even though we know that subscription rates and morning newspapers are going away, I don't remember when evening newspapers went away, but and it's been a long time, but they went, evening newspapers, they just kind of disappeared. And one day, all we had was the morning newspapers. And now some towns don't even have those. Our local morning newspaper no longer prints an edition on Sunday or Monday. And they've started taking, and they're paper thin, there's not as many pages. So newspapers are on their last leg. Drive-in movies, it's not like one day they just said, hey, we're shutting down all the drive-in movies in the country. It's just like they slowly closed down one after another. And I guess people just didn't want to go sit and watch a movie in their car. I guess because the movie theaters became more modern and better. And Enid used to have 2 drive-in movie theaters, and I have no clue. I think I was probably off at college, maybe around the time they were closed down. Maybe I don't know. I don't really remember when drive-in movies shut down. Green stamps. We've done some specials and some episodes on green stamps. Some, from what we've learned, not every place in the United States had green stamps, but I think the majority of places had green stamps. I don't remember when green stamps faded away. It seems like the stores and getting the green stamps with your groceries kind of slowly faded, but green stamps didn't end. It seems like there was still pockets, and you could still order green stamp merchandise, like from their catalog or from their maybe eventually website, maybe, but you just weren't getting, I don't know. They just kind of disappeared. One day I remember them being there, and the next day they were gone. How about this one? And this one, I hope this one isn't still around, but it could be. Fuzzy toilet seat covers. And, I'm not talking just cloth. I'm talking shag, not even worse than shag. Remember those? Not only did you have the fuzzy ring around the toilet, but then the back of the seat had a fuzzy cover on it. So when you put the lid down, there was this real colorful fuzzy seat cover. And so those disappeared. And I don't know exactly when those disappeared, but they probably disappeared around the time of colored toilet paper. So for some of you that are listening to this that may not have been around back in the day, yeah, we used to have blue and pink and yellow and green toilet paper. And you could get toilet paper to match your fuzzy toilet seat. And now all that disappeared. When did it go? Where did it go? I don't know. Wood paneled walls. Now, I just went to a restaurant here in Enid last week that had a wood paneled wall, but it is a diner from back in the day, and they have not wanted to redecorate it and change it because they've wanted to keep that diner feel. So, but you don't see new businesses or houses with wood paneling, and then the old houses that did have wood paneling and businesses, most of the businesses have pulled out all of the wood paneling, and then houses, most people have painted over the wood paneling. But I don't remember, when did we all decide we didn't want wood paneling anymore? I thought it was kind of cool back in the day. Seems like almost every house we lived in when I was a kid had at least one room with wood paneling. One thing you don't get much anymore, and this is just mainly on cars because well, I don't even know if trucks some trucks still have it, but bench seats in cars. So even, my 84 Buick Cutlass had a bench seat. And the cool thing about bench seats is when you had a girlfriend, she could sit like literally right next to you, like literally right next to you. And like when she was looking out the window, the rear view mirror would have been in her view. Now, I think part of that was also before seatbelts were required to be worn by law. So before the seatbelt law, she could scooch over and sit right next to you, And so my 76 Monte Carlo had a way big bench front seat. 62 Chevy Bel Air. And then after my 84, and my 64 Buick Skylark. And now modern cars, modern SUVs, bucket seats. No more bench seats. So bench seats, I don't know what year they decided to say goodbye to bench seats, but somewhere along the line they did. What about spinner racks with paper maps? Of course, we don't use paper maps anymore because we've all got satellite. God, remember before satellite tracking and everything came to our phones? You'd buy the little, I can't even remember what they were called, but they were little satellite tracking things you could put in your car and plug into your cigarette lighter. But anyway, those I'm sure kind of started to do away with. I'm sure somebody still makes paper maps, and in some truck stop somewhere, there's got to be paper maps somewhere. But would you really need to buy one? I mean, I don't know. Does anybody out there still have a paper map in their glove box? And if you do, when's the last time you used it? Let me know. So I don't know when paper maps kind of fizzled. So most gas stations quit selling them. Dragging the strip. When I graduated high school in 1981, it was still a big thing. It was the thing to do on the weekends was to drag the strip. And then I remember as late as 89, in the 80s, there were still kids dragging local strips. And I think at that point, some of them had gotten so big. Maybe that's what happened. It seems like I remember like down in Moore, Oklahoma, dragging the strip had gotten so big and busy that it was shutting down the town and people couldn't get to where they wanted to be. So the cops started cracking down on it. And maybe it was the early 90s, maybe the police started cracking down and kids got less interested. I don't know. Somebody let me know. When did dragging the strip, when was the last year you all remember somebody dragging the strip? Now here in Enid, Oklahoma, I don't think anybody drags the strip anymore, but out of nostalgia, we have a cruise every Father's Day weekend and it's packed. I mean, it's bumper to bumper cars and people lining the streets in lawn chairs to watch people drag. So even though the regular dragging every weekend is gone, there are still a lot of cruises, and we have, at least that annual cruise. And then the last item on my list, and let me know, I'm sure there's some still out there, but fake plastic fruit, on the display in the middle of your table. Whatever happened and when and where is all that plastic fruit? There's got to be like a place. Do you guys ever go to an antique store or a vintage retro market and see plastic fruit anywhere? Does anybody still have their set of plastic fruit? And I remember, so my mom not only had plastic fruit, it seems like she had a spinning wooden thing with these little wooden dish things in them and a wooden pineapple in the middle. And you could take the top off of the pineapple, and it was like our catch-all. There was like rubber bands and paper clips and crud in there. Why does it seem like she kept fruit in the wooden like trays that were around it, and then you could spin? I don't know. I don't know. Let me know what happened to plastic fruit and when it went away. So that's my list. It's just kind of a quick list of 25 everyday things that have quietly disappeared. I know there are other things, like phone booths and landlines. We held on to our landline for, quite a while. But so it was tied in with our television service, and they kept telling us it was going to cost more to disconnect our phone than just to keep it as part of our cable bill. And so we had a landline. I bet we had it for 3 to 5 years, maybe at least 3, where we never used it. It was there. And eventually I think we all forgot the phone number, and it never rang. Even spam phone calls stopped. It just sat there, and it was connected to a answering machine, but yeah, it just never got used. And then I think eventually either we changed cable companies, or I said, yeah, we're done. This is goofy. Although, sometimes when things happen and your service goes out, there are probably going to be times we all wish we had a landline, but they are gone. And like I say, payphones now, there are some payphones here and there, but just, when I was growing up, there were payphones on lots and lots of corners. So things like that. There are things that have disappeared, but not quite completely. So let me know what's something that you guys were just sitting there thinking one day, and then bam, all of a sudden you're like, hey, where did this and this go? Let me know. Call me. Now don't call me. Text me. No, don't text me. Email me. Email Curtis@curtistucker.com, shags@shaggyduck.com. I guess one of these days I'll get because I know Dave. Hey, Dave. Dave listens, and he usually responds to this podcast when he calls Todd's phone for the 70s Buzz and Buzzhead Radio. So maybe I will get a phone number that you guys can text or call for my shows. But right now, I don't have anything. I guess I could probably get an internet number or something. But anyway, guys, have a great evening. Again, let me know what thing have you noticed that has slowly disappeared. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast if you're listening to it on a podcasting app. If you're watching it on YouTube, hey, leave me a comment. I appreciate it. Hey, leave me a review on one of the podcasting apps. And you don't even have to leave a review. Just leave me a comment, saying something about the episode, like one of the things that you remember that have disappeared, and or send me an email, and I'm going to get out of here. See ya.